All right, let's dive into a case today that's really going to get you thinking. The Jade Jensen case. It's, well, it's got everything you'd want in a true crime story. Family secrets, shocking death, and of course the question of whether or not justice was actually served. Our source material for this deep dive is a podcast episode called 48 Hours, Jade Jensen and the Secret Photos. But we're just going to call it 48 Hours for short. So get ready to unpack this whole case with us.
Yeah, this one is interesting. It makes you think about some really tough questions about, like motive and intent, betrayal, all that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Right away, this case throws a curveball. We're talking sunny San Diego County, and we've got this successful interior designer, Jade Jensen, accused of murdering her stepfather, Tom Marman. They find his body under a pile of trash in the driveway.
Grim discovery.
Yeah, for sure. So right away, it seems like, okay, foul play.
Right. But then this autopsy report says that Tom actually died from acute zolpidem intoxication.
Okay, so in plain English, he overdosed on Ambien. Huh. So no signs of strangulation or any violence that would suggest murder.
Nope. None of that.
Wow, so that's got to make it hard to prosecute, right?
Absolutely. I mean, they have to prove that she intentionally caused the overdose.
Right.
Which is way harder than, say, proving she strangled him.
I can imagine. And that's where these secret photos come in. So Jade is saying she found all these nude pictures of herself on Tom's computer. Hundreds of them. And she says they were taken without her knowledge or consent.
Yeah, that's a bombshell. Think about finding something like that. The sense of violation, the betrayal. It's got to be traumatic.
Oh, for sure. I mean, do you think maybe that discovery changed Jade's state of mind? Like pushed her to do something she wouldn't normally do?
It's definitely possible. And the prosecution even acknowledged those photos and their impact. That's a big deal, because it kind of shifts the motive away from like premeditated murder and more towards a crime of passion, maybe.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So was it more of a spur of the moment thing because of the photos?
Maybe. That's what the prosecution would have us believe anyway.
Okay, so let's talk about some of that evidence they presented. They really focused on these text messages between Jade and this guy named Alan Roach, who they called the fixer in this whole alleged murder plot. And some of those messages sound pretty incriminating, like, I just dosed the hell out of him.
Yeah, those are definitely red flags.
So it seems like there was a plan to drug and kill Tom, right?
Well, the prosecution argued that those messages showed premeditation. But you know how it is with text messages. They can be interpreted in different ways.
For sure. So maybe those messages don't actually prove intent. Like maybe there's another explanation.
It's possible.
Okay, so then there's Jade's side of the story. She's claiming that she found Tom unresponsive in her car after he overdosed. And she says she panicked, thought she would be blamed, and tried to cover it all up.
Now that sounds far-fetched, but it does line up with some of the evidence. Remember, no signs of violence in the autopsy report. And the official cause of death was accidental overdose.
Right. But then we had these other witnesses. Adam Siplak, a friend of Jade's, he's the one who made that 911 call, saying that Jade confessed to drugging, suffocating, and strangling Tom.
And that contradicts the physical evidence, doesn't it? No strangulation marks.
Oh, that's true.
So, sometimes eyewitness accounts aren't the most reliable, especially in an emotionally charged situation like that. Memories can be tricky.
Makes sense. And then there's Brian Solomon. He claims that Jade actually asked him to strangle Tom.
So we've got all these conflicting stories. Really makes you wonder, who's telling the truth here and why?
Yeah, it's definitely complicated. And that's exactly what the jury had to figure out as they considered all the evidence.
It's a real head scratcher, this one.
It is.
Yeah, it really is. Like a classic he said, she said kind of thing. It's tough to get to the truth of it all.
And the jury still had to come up with a verdict, despite all the inconsistencies. And the lack of, clear physical evidence. What was it?
Guilty of first-degree murder.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what do you think convinced?
Well, the prosecution had a pretty strong narrative. They focused on those text messages. And then the stuff Jade bought, like gloves and towels and rope.
Oh, yeah, they called it a murder kit, right?
Right.
Especially the rope. That just seems, it makes you think she was going to strangle him.
Right, but it goes deeper than that. The prosecution was talking about consciousness of guilt. So basically, they said that Jade trying to hide the body and coming up with a cover story meant that she knew she did something wrong.
Okay, so they're saying that even though the cause of death wasn't strangulation, her actions after, like trying to hide the body, show that she meant to kill him all along.
Exactly. They built a case that said she had a plan that led to Tom's death, even if it didn't go down exactly how she might have first thought it would.
That's interesting. Right. If the prosecution was so sure that she planned it all out, why bring up those photos? You know, the ones Jade said she found on Tom's computer.
Yeah, it seems like it would contradict their argument.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. By acknowledging the photos and how they could have affected Jade, the prosecution was basically saying there was another victim here, Jade.
Whoa, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. They were saying, okay, maybe she did plan to kill Tom at first, but finding those photos, that could have been like a breaking point for her, you know?
So, like, it pushed her over the edge.
Exactly.
So now it's not just about whether she killed Tom, but why?
Right, and those photos, if they were really taken without her consent, that changes how we see their whole relationship.
Totally. Makes you think about, like, was there abuse going on? What was the power dynamic between them?
All those questions come into play.
It really makes you wonder how the jury saw Jade. I mean, did they see her as a victim too?
It's possible, right? We don't know exactly what they talked about, but the prosecution bringing up those photos, it definitely changed how the whole case was presented.
And it may be how the jury saw Jade. Man, this is heavy. We also have to think about everyone else involved, like Tom's business partner, Pat Flanagan. He said he was relieved about the guilty verdict.
Yeah, he said something like, he died buried in trash. He was focused on how brutal it was.
Right. But then Jade's father, Steve Jenks, he still says she's innocent. Blames it all on Tom's betrayal.
It's a reminder that these cases, they affect so many people. There's so much grief and anger and confusion.
And even with a guilty verdict, there are still so many unanswered questions. It's hard not to think about Tom's actions and, you know, how they affected Jade. Did his betrayal cause all of this? And those photos, did they change how the jury saw her? Did they make the difference?
Yeah, we're left with those questions, aren't we? Makes you think about human behavior, you know, and the justice system. Was this revenge, a reaction to something awful, or just a horrible accident?
I don't know. It makes you think about guilt and innocence.
Yeah.
How complicated it can be. People do things for all kinds of reasons.
Yeah. Sometimes those reasons are painful.
And it shows you how limited the justice system can be. How do you look at evidence that's basically all circumstantial?
Right. Right.
And how do you factor in someone's emotions, their mental state?
It's tough.
We want to make sure justice is served. But people are complicated.
That's for sure.
This case really makes you think about some uncomfortable stuff.
It does.
About ourselves, about the world, about right and wrong, good and evil.
All of that.
It's not about easy answers.
No.
It's about thinking critically.
Looking at things from different angles.
And realizing that sometimes the truth is messy. So that's our deep dive into the Jade Jenks case. More questions than answers.
But that's okay.
It is, actually. Those questions are important.
They are.
They make you really engage with this case.
Yeah.
Think about all sides of it.
Yeah.
And realize that things aren't always black and white. So if you're interested, do some more digging on your own.
Yeah, go back to the source material.
Read different accounts, look at the evidence, see what you think.
You might be surprised.
And you'll probably have even more questions.
Because sometimes it's the questions that are the most important.
Exactly.
They make you think.
They make you empathize.
And they make you approach tough issues with, you know, with an open mind.
So thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon with another deep dive.